网路不必让人感到恶心。
When I was in graduate school, there was a student who I looked up to.
Look up to someone.
这个知识点的含义是尊敬、仰慕某人。惯用法是在口语中使用 look up to 来表示对某人的尊敬或仰慕。
His name was Peter. Peter was the type of person you wanted to be like. He was smart, articulate, and winsome. One day I saw Peter in the library. It was his final quarter in our program, and he was about to graduate.
It was his final quarter in our program and he was about to graduate.
这个知识点的含义是指一种句子结构 it was 加 time period 加。惯用法是在口语中使用这种句子结构来描述某种时间段内发生的事情。
Peter, congratulations! You must be so excited. His response surprised me. I am, but I haven't built my network like I should have. So I don't
Build my network.
这个词组的含义是建立自己的社会关系网，包括朋友、同事和其他人。它通常用于描述一个人在职业或个人生活中建立联系和获得支持。
have any jobs lined up yet.
I don't have any jobs lined up yet.
这个短语的含义是指一个人还没有找到工作或机会。它通常用于描述一个人在职业生涯中面临挑战和不确定性。
His answer terrified me.
Terrified me.
这个动词的含义是指一个人感到极度恐惧或害怕。它通常用于描述一个人在面对挑战或不确定性时的情绪反应。
If someone as impressive as Peter didn't have a job lined up, then what was
If someone as impressive as Peter didn't have a job lined up, then what was I to do?
这个短语的含义是指一个人在面对挑战或不确定性时，寻求他人的帮助和指导。它通常用于描述一个人在职业生涯中寻求建议和支持。
I to do? As the son of two immigrants,
As the son of two immigrants, education was the key to success.
这个短语的含义是指教育在个人成功中的重要性。它通常用于描述一个人对教育的看法和价值观。
education was the key to success. I could not afford to waste this opportunity.
I could not afford to waste this opportunity.
这个短语的含义是指一个人不能浪费机会或资源。它通常用于描述一个人对成功和发展的渴望。
I found myself feeling anxious and fearful.
Found myself feeling anxious and fearful.
这个动词的含义是指一个人感到焦虑和害怕。它通常用于描述一个人在面对挑战或不确定性时的情绪反应。
I had to find a way to protect my career.
I had to find a way to protect my career.
这个短语的含义是指一个人需要保护自己的职业生涯。它通常用于描述一个人在面对挑战或不确定性时寻求帮助和指导。
Stakes were too high for me to finish school without having a job lined up. Then I remembered the advice I'd been given countless times. Go network. Build relationships. After all, it's all about who you know, not what you know. They were right. Education wasn't the highway of opportunity. It was merely an on-ramp.
On-ramp.
在英语中 on-ramp 是一个常见的词组，指的是进入高速公路或其他高级系统的入口。这个知识点对应的时间是 0.01 分29秒、836至 0.01 分31秒、462。
The highway of opportunity was social capital, your network, the people you know, and more importantly, the people who know you.
The people you know, and more importantly, the people who know you.
这个句子使用了一个典型的美国人惯用法 the people you know 和 the people who know you。 这两个短语分别指的是你的朋友圈和你的专业网络。这个句子强调了建立专业网络对于个人成功的重要性。
I was determined. I set off to build a network that would guarantee my success. I spent as much time as I could building relationships with people who could hire me when I graduated. The process worked, but it didn't feel right. I was having the right conversations. I was
Right conversations.
这个词组的含义是指与正确的人进行交谈，建立良好的关系。这在职业发展中非常重要。
meeting the right people.
Meeting the right people.
这个口语俚语的含义是指与正确的人建立联系，这在职业发展中非常重要。它暗示着与有影响力、有能力的人进行交往。
And job opportunities began to open up. But networking and building relationships began to feel gross. I was approaching people as a transactional consumer, not
I was approaching people as a transactional consumer, not as a relational investor.
这个句子强调了在职业发展中应将人际关系视为投资，而不是仅仅看待对方的价值。这需要建立信任和互惠。
as a relational investor. My driving question was focused on what can I get from this person? How can they help me? I was asking the wrong questions.
Asking the wrong questions.
这个动词的含义是指问错的问题，导致无法获得想要的结果。这在职业发展中非常重要，因为正确的问题可以带来正确的答案和机会。
Networking was a necessary evil. It felt gross. Then one day the tables were turned.
Turn the tables.
这个知识点的含义是指情况突然逆转，原本占据优势的人变得处于劣势。比如，在这段字幕中，原先的 networking 是一种必要的坏事，但后来却被一位朋友的行为给打破了。
I saw a childhood acquaintance at a coffee shop. We started a conversation. He then spent the entire time trying to convince me to join the multi-level marketing scheme that he was a part of. You see, the more people he signed up underneath him, the more money he would make. But that's not all. He'd help me build an empire as well. In fact, I could make so much money, I would never need to work again. I could give to my parents for all that they had given to me. And all by simply helping people change their spending habits and just begin to buy products from us. Products that they were already going to buy on their own anyways. It was at that moment that I began to realize if networking ever feels gross, you're doing it wrong. It turns out that social scientists had studied what I've experienced. In 2014, researchers from the University of Toronto, Harvard, and Northeastern teamed up to investigate the impact of building social capital on people's sense of morality.
Building social capital.
这个知识点的含义是指通过建立社会关系和网络来获得资源、信息和支持。这种行为可以带来积极的结果，如职业表现、人际关系等。
What they discovered across their work was that when people built relationships for selfish pursuits, it left them feeling psychologically dirty and even morally stained. Decades of research confirms the common advice about networking. Building social capital leads to a host of positive outcomes: job performance, salary levels, employability, and so much more. If you want to build your career or your business, then networking is a good strategy. But here's the dilemma. When people built relationships for selfish gain,
When people built relationships for selfish gain, it left them feeling dirty.
这个知识点涉及到人际关系和自私行为的后果。这种表达方式使用了
them feeling dirty. And when they felt dirty, they are even less likely to engage with those people and to build
And when they felt dirty, they were even less likely to engage with those people and to build those relationships.
这个知识点涉及到句子结构和逻辑关系。这种表达方式使用了并列句式和条件状语从句。
Build those relationships, even though that might be exactly what they needed for their success in their careers. There's a reason that I felt gross when I was approaching people as a transactional consumer instead of as a relational investor. How do you do relationships in a way that you don't feel like you need to rinse off after every coffee meeting? I began to ask a different question. Instead of, what can I get from this person? I began to ask, what can I give to this person? Everything changed. I discovered generous relational investors who introduced
Generous relational investors.
这个词组指的是那些以关系为导向的慷慨投资者，他们注重建立和维护人际关系，而不是仅仅关注经济利益。
me to a different paradigm, a new way of doing relationships. Jeff, a business leader in Seattle, was one of them. If you ever sit with him for coffee, you quickly realize his goal is to understand how he can serve you, not how you can serve him. This new mindset moved me from being a greedy transactional consumer to being a generous relational investor. Relational investors leave people better than they found them. The goal
Relational investors leave people better than they found them.
这个短语描述的是一种关系投资者的行为，他们通过帮助他人而变得更加成功和有价值。
isn't giving to gain, or even about paying it forward so that positive things circle back around for you one day. Relational investors give out of the overflow of who they are and what they've already been given. They bring generosity beyond reciprocity. They ask a different question. Instead of, what can I get from this person? They ask, what can I give to this person? It represents a mindset shift from fixating on pathology to focus.
Mindset shift.
这个知识点的含义是指从一种思维方式转变为另一种思维方式，例如从关注问题转变为关注解决方案。
Focusing on potential. The human default is pathology. Pathology is all about the barriers, the obstacles, the brokenness, the things that are going wrong. My PhD is in industrial and organizational psychology. For decades, psychology and many other human-centered disciplines have focused on pathology. What's broken? How do we fix it? Over the last 30 years, there's been a revolution that's pushed against pathology, though, and begun to look for potential. What's working? What's going well? How do we make things even better? It's a shift from scarcity to abundance. And it starts with the assumption that there is possibility and there is potential to be realized. Both are important. We have to pay attention to barriers and limitations, but we also
Barriers and limitations.
这个词组指的是阻碍和限制，常用于描述个人或团体面临的挑战和困难。
We have to pay attention to barriers and limitations, but we also need to recognize possibility and potential.
这个句子强调了在面临挑战和限制时，需要同时考虑到可能性和潜力。
also need to recognize possibility and potential. But our baseline is
self-preservation.
这个短语指的是个人保护自己的权利和利益，常用于描述个人或团体的自我保护意识。
Preservation. Protect my career. Position myself for success. When I became free from the fear of finding a job,
When I became free from the fear of finding a job, I was able to move from protecting my pathology to looking for potential.
这个句子使用了条件语气 when 和转折语气 but， 强调了个人从一种状态到另一种状态的转变。
able to move from protecting my pathology to looking for potential. As the old saying goes, it's even better to give than it is to receive.
Give than it is to receive.
这个知识点的含义是指给予帮助或支持比接受帮助更重要。惯用法是在口语中使用 It's even better to give 这样的句子来表达这一点。
And you don't have to be wealthy to be a relational investor. I was a poor student. I discovered that generous relational investors give their time, their treasure, and their talent. Generosity looks different in different seasons of life. It could be as simple as the gift of your undivided attention the next time you're meeting with somebody. Or maybe it's a heartfelt thank you note, letting someone know you've appreciated how they have invested in you.
Letting someone know you've appreciated how they have invested in you.
这个句子表达了对他人的感谢和认可，它强调了在人际关系中表达感激的重要性。
Perhaps it's a timely introduction. You've built a relationship with somebody, and you know somebody else who would be mutually beneficial for them to meet. So you make that connection. Generosity could even look like helping a coworker who's behind on a deadline, taking a little extra time to help them get caught up. It could even be as simple as the offer to review someone's resume for them. The possibilities for generosity are only limited by your imagination. Because people aren't a process. People are the purpose. And business is all about people. It's not about extracting value or leveraging relationships. It's about building meaningful, generous, and mutually beneficial relationships.
Building meaningful, generous, and mutually beneficial relationships.
这个短语描述了建立有意义、慷慨和互利的关系的重要性。
Ways to serve other people, even if they are the ones who are helping you. You might not get anything back right away, or even at all, but there's still value in the relationship. Because every person has inherent dignity, value, and worth, regardless.
Every person has inherent dignity, value, and worth.
这个句子强调了每个人都有固有的尊严、价值和重要性的原则。
Of the outcome. Years after my conversation with Peter in the library, I found myself working in a university, helping lead a graduate business program. I was meeting with a prospective student to learn about his goals. He was a great candidate, and I really wanted him in our program. But over the course of the conversation, I began to realize what he was looking for wasn't quite what I had to offer. Reluctantly, I pointed him in a different direction. A year later, I had another similar conversation with a young woman who was also exploring our program. She was incredible. Her goals aligned with our training, and she became one of our best students. But it wasn't until after she started when I discovered she had found out about our program from the young man I'd met over a year before. He had told her if she met with me, I'd put her interests first.
Put her interests first.
这个短语的意思是优先考虑某人的需求或利益。它通常用于商业或专业场合中。
And that if she wasn't the right fit, I'd point her in the right direction.
Point her in the right direction.
这个短语的意思是给某人提供正确的方向或建议。它通常用于表示帮助或指导他人。
Focusing on the interests of other people can
Focusing on the interests of other people.
这个短语强调了关注他人的需求和感受的重要性。它表明了对他人福祉的重视。
absolutely pay off for the long term.
Can absolutely pay off for the long term.
这个句子表明了长期来看，某种行为或决定可能会带来巨大的回报。这句话强调了长期的利益和成果。
But that's not the point. There is nothing more rewarding than giving to other people.
Giving to other people.
这个短语强调了帮助他人的重要性，它表明了对他人福祉的重视和关心。
My parents, they impressed the value of education on me, but they
My parents, they impressed the value of education on me.
这个句子表明了父母对教育的重视和重要性，它强调了教育在个人成长中的作用。
also demonstrated the value of generosity.
The value of generosity.
这个短语强调了慷慨和帮助他人的重要性，它表明了对他人福祉的重视和关心。
They have been avid suburban gardeners for over 40 years. They started composting in Seattle before composting was the thing to do.
They started composting in Seattle before composting was the thing to do.
这个句子表明了他们在环境保护和环保方面的先见之识，它强调了对环境的重视和关心。
Every year I have watched them till the ground, fertilize, prepare and plant seeds, water them, and care for their garden with great intent. They do such an excellent job that
They do such an excellent job.
这个句子表达了对某人的工作表现的高度赞赏和肯定。
every year they harvest so much produce, there's absolutely no way they can possibly consume it all themselves. They have so much that it will go to spoil. It will go to waste. So what do? Instead of letting it go to spoil, they spoil their friends. They take all the excess, they put it in bags and baskets, and they generously share it with all of their friends and neighbors. Most years, they even take their extra seeds to help friends start their own gardens for the following year. Looking back, I realize my parents didn't garden just for themselves. Don't get me wrong, they enjoyed the fresh fruit and produce, but they had equal, if not greater joy in giving to the people around them. The relationships in their lives represent a place for giving, not a vehicle for getting. They showed me that you can get more than you give by
Get more than you give.
这个知识点的含义是指通过给予和帮助他人，你可以获得比你给予更多的回报。这是一个非常重要的概念，强调了帮助他人的价值。
giving more than you get. Our networks, our relationships are also like a garden. If we tend them well, they will grow and they will produce fruit. So much, in fact, there's absolutely no way we can possibly consume it all ourselves. Instead of letting relationships go to waste,
Instead of letting relationships go to waste, we can invest in them, give to them, serve them, connect them with each other.
这个句子使用了一个常见的词组 invest in， 表示投资关系或人际网络。它强调了关系的重要性和价值。
invest in them, give to them, serve them, connect them with each other. When we give social capital, we don't lose it. It doesn't decrease. It increases. Who knows? We might even help someone start their own garden. Becoming a generous relational investor, it's a lifestyle. It's a different paradigm of relationships.
Paradigm.
一个范式或模式，通常指一种思维方式或方法。这个词组在英语中非常常用，尤其是在学术和专业领域。
So what's your relational posture? Are you a greedy transactional consumer or a generous relational investor?
Generous.
慷慨的，乐于助人的。这是一个非常重要的词组，表明了个体对他人帮助和支持的态度。
Are you protecting your pathology or pushing
Pathology.
病理学或心理问题。这是一个专业词组，常用于描述个体的行为或思维模式中存在的问题。
for potential? It's never too late to begin to ask a different question and to start to look for what can I give, not
What can I give, not what can I get?
我能给予什么，而不是我能得到什么。这是一个非常重要的口语俚语，表明了个体对他人帮助和支持的态度。
what can I get.
恳请点赞，订阅我们的频道，一起学习演讲中的实用英语。